Good afternoon. I'm excited that we're here at our final class. It won't be the end of everything because we'll leave the Facebook group open for a while to allow people to complete their work. I shouldn't say we'll leave it open. We are going to leave it open, period. But I will continue to monitor it daily and answer any questions that come up in there. After that, after we've kind of got through with that, we'll still leave it open and people can comment or share ideas or ask questions of one another. And today's presentation is going to be a little different. We're going to leave behind some of the the technical stuff. We've kind of overwhelmed you these last few weeks with information, and we're going to go back almost to where we began and look at why you're working on what you're working on, what all the plans are about, and that kind of thing. So, going to be a lot of information, but it's not going to be technical. It's going to be more why, and trying to give you that big picture perspective of why you're drilling down and working on these different plans. All right, so let's get started. So presumably the reason that you're even in this program is that you want to accomplish some of these things, save some money, pay off some debts, fund the things that matter to you, and prepare for the future. And the only way that we can do this is by putting a plan together. And you recall we talked about how things used to be simpler, that when you got a paycheck, it was an actual check that you received. You took it to the bank. Now, if you're under 30, and quite possibly under 40, you may not remember these things. But certainly when I got my first jobs, we were paid either by getting some actual cash in a small envelope that wrote down our hours and talked about how much we had earned and what they deducted. So we actually got cash in an envelope, or we got a paper check that we had to take to the bank. And if we wanted some money, we deposited that check in the bank at horribly inconvenient hours. And there was no open all these hours. It was like maybe 10 till 3, Monday to Friday, and that was it. So you figure out how you're going to get there, because they're not open other times, and there's no other way of banking, no online, no telephone, no nothing. So if you wanted money, you reversed the process. You made yourself a check, essentially, called a withdrawal slip, and they gave you the cash back. And maybe you had a little book like this that had your information in it about what had been going on in your account, how much money was in there. If we made purchases, we made them with cash, and that was pretty much it. Sophisticated folks might write a check, and the true sophisticates would actually balance their checkbook register at the end of the month. That was it. And because of that, you really knew where you were at financially all the time. There was no credits. There was no way to spend money you didn't have. And you were in control of your cash. If you went to the bank to try to take some money out that you didn't have, well, of course, you didn't get anything. Your little bank book told you where you were at. So you pretty much had this innate sense always of where your money was at without really trying too hard. But things have gotten a little more complicated. Bank machines came along, and then debit cards with them, credit cards, of course. I was listening the other day to a presentation that indicated that if the credit card companies can get you on the hook for $850, that's not very much. $850, odds are you will never pay that off. You will never get your credit card back down to zero permanently. Pre-authorized debit, money coming out of your account while you sleep. Of course, telephone and then internet banking. Now you can not only bank with your phone, you can actually pay with your phone, whether you're using loyalty cards or some other form of quasi-cash, or just swiping your phone in front of some kind of scanner. And of course, it's all become wearable as well. You can have your own watch and pay from your watch. So consequently, people have no idea where their actual money's at day to day. So some people feel like they make a good income and should get more out of it. They feel like their personal finances are all products, but no plan. And they want to find a way to fund their dreams and get more life from the money that they already have. So here's a question for you. Are you comfortable, confident, and content, financially speaking? Well, we know you're not, because you're here. What I'm hoping is that you are more confident, more comfortable, and feeling like you're on your way to being more content with your finances than you did 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, since you started working on this. Now, do you know what your financial principles are? Now, we haven't actually talked about that through this program. We have really talked about the how-tos, but what you have to know, first and foremost, is what do you stand for financially? What are you about? One of the principles we've tried to impress upon you is you have to plan. Everything has to be done from and within the context of a plan. And a second principle is that we shouldn't spend money we don't have, which is let's get rid of debt, let's get rid of all our debt, and let's not buy things unless we have saved for them or have the cash flow for them. I want to encourage you too, throughout this afternoon or this evening's presentation, depending where you are, to put your, just enter your questions in the comment box. Happy to answer them as we go. So, question, do you have all the plans in place that you need to? Well, you may not yet, but we've given you the tools to do that, to work on we're going to talk about 5 plans that are key to running your finances. And when I say running your finances, there's really only 2 choices. Either you're going to run your finances, or your finances are going to run you. And while money isn't the purpose of life, money has a very powerful, exercises a very powerful influence over our life, because many of the things that we do require money. And money is what makes many of the things happen that we are trying to make happen. So either we run our money or our money runs us. And I made a little video yesterday that I posted on Facebook, just a walk and talk, where I talked about how we are the most marketed to people that have ever existed. We are beamed at constantly, where we're being told, don't be satisfied, you shouldn't be satisfied, you've got problems, and company X, Y, or Z has product A, B, or C that's going to solve your problems. So it's, you may have heard some of these nasty things that go around about how to influence people by speaking negatively to them or negging on them, where you're just kind of undermining their self-esteem. Well, you know what? That's exactly what marketers do. Every marketing message that you see, pretty much, is designed to make you feel like you are not adequate. But if you get what they're trying to give you, then life will be better. So, and we know that's not true, but we are not immune to it, and they're very, very good at that. So, by having plans, we avoid getting sucked in by marketers and doing things that we don't want to do financially. So, going through this program, doing the work that you're doing, You're in the right place if you want to get on track and keep on track with your money and to achieve your financial goals and dreams. And you want to be able to meet and persevere through any financial challenge that comes on your way. So I hope that you've already gotten a long way down the road to getting some of these things done. I know that it's not simple, and I want to really encourage you today. I want to encourage you that it takes time. We started with our cash flow plan. And in fact, we started with a very simple kind of cash flow plan and then got into the big spending plan, we called it, which is a cash flow plan. And it takes time. When my wife and I put these practices in place in our own lives, it really took about 90 or 100 days before we really had our hands completely around this so that it was running as it should. And we spent a lot of time working on it while we did that. Now, we spend time on it, but it goes very simply because we have systems in place and, more importantly, mindsets and habits that have really are standing us in good stead. So this could be your reality. You don't know what you're doing or where to begin. Hopefully, you've been through all the materials and you've gotten that down so that you know where you want to go now and you have an idea how to start. We're happy to help you out further if that's not the case. And so often people won't do what they need to do financially because they think everything's always changing in their life. If I make a plan, everything will just change every way, so why set myself up to fail? Now there's some truth to that, in that everything is always changing. However, you're not setting yourself up to fail. You're setting yourself up to chart your course and adjust as you go. When an airplane takes off, heading for somewhere in the distance, it files a flight plan. Well, that's what we're doing with these plans. We're filing our plans. But as the airplane goes, things happen. Winds come up. You get blown off course. You get strong headwinds that take you longer to get somewhere. Maybe you get tailwinds that help you get there faster. Or you see storms ahead and you have to go around them. Or there's turbulence at a certain elevation, so you have to move to a different elevation, a different altitude, in order to avoid the turbulence. Maybe the plane gets thrown around a bit. All these things go on in our financial life, and we just have to adjust as we go. But because we have our course charted, we find our way, and we adjust, and we know how to adjust. We also put practices in place and run from principles. Now, perhaps you think, I like my life the way it is. I don't really want to change it. If I make plans, I'll just have to stick to them, and I'm never going to be able to have any fun or enjoy myself. Well, that's not the case. Freedom is not the freedom to just spend money willy-nilly. Real freedom comes from knowing exactly what you're doing with your finances because you know what you're doing with your life then. So when you make decisions to go out and have fun or to buy something that you've wanted, you know the context it all fits in. There's no stress and no concern about it because it's all been well thought out. And then the other thing that we let guide us around are kind of big picture macroeconomics thing. And you've heard me say over the last couple of weeks, if you're hearing news about finances on television, you can ignore them. Because if the people on television knew what they were talking about financially, they would be making fortunes from what they claim to know, rather than earning a salary as a financial pundit. And that's the same whether it's someone who is on the radio or many who write a book. Now, there are people who have had great success, and those are people that you might want to emulate. But the people on Business News Network or CNBC or these other types of networks are not those people. So don't let hearing bad news about the economy, money, jobs get you down. If you've got your plans in place, you're going to be fine. What goes on around you is not going to undermine your house. If you want to use another simple analogy, what you've done by putting all these plants together is you've built the brick house of the third pig. You remember the story. The first pig built their house out of straw. The second pig built their house out of sticks. But the third pig built their house out of bricks. And it was that house that stood during the storms. So people think, oh, well, look at the Great Recession of 2008. What happened then? Why even bother? There's all these terrible things that go on that are beyond my control. And it's true. There are things that go on that are totally beyond your control. However, there's so much that's in your control that you can keep yourself pretty well protected from those big storms that tend to blow everybody else around. All right, so just think for a moment. Just ask yourself this question. What are your fears? What's stopping you? Here's why we need to plan, so that you know why you're doing what you're doing, why you're slogging through getting this cash flow plan thing right, doing the work you need to do to get your security plan in place, putting your financial plan together long term, which is a complex process, and then when you get to that stage, putting your investment plan together. Why are we doing all that? Well, one of the reasons is we really have a moral responsibility. We are the 1%. You hear the talk about the 1%ers, and it's always intended to be some mega rich person, a billionaire. But the truth is, from a global perspective, almost all of us, or many of us, certainly the majority, in North America and Western Europe, we are the 1%. What you see there on your screen is a calculator that's used to determine where you fit in the grand scheme of things from a global income perspective. So I did this a little while ago, and this is entered in Canadian dollars an annual income of $47,000, which I believe is the median annual income in Canada for full-time employment. That puts you, if you earn $47,000, you're in the top 0.73% of the richest people in the world by income. Or to put it another way, of all the people on the planet, you're the 43.9 millionth richest person on the planet. So, with great opportunity comes great expectation. But of course, it's not easy. We do have big picture things that have an impact. Like this is just a quick and easy chart of what happened from December 2007 to March 2009. We looked at some of those periods last week when we talked about investing. There was a lot of information written about what's now called the Great Recession. I did a ton of research, read many, many books to try to get an understanding of what exactly went on. And it has left cities devastated, and we're still seeing the fallout of that. The cities in the so-called Rust Belt, so Detroit, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, some others, experienced real devastation, and their populations shrunk by percentages in the double digits. And they've actually had to tear down whole neighborhoods because the houses have emptied out and are derelict. We've really, I would say, recovered from that, but there was a big shift in the economy that happened that is probably never going to come back to the way it once was. And one of the effects we saw in the United States was the election of Donald Trump as president, because people in those Rust Belt areas voted for him, and their votes, due to the complexities of the American electoral system, put him over the top. And that's really the vote of the for better or for worse, I'm not advocating at all for any particular American president, but what I'm saying is it had an effect so profound that those folks were upset and voted for Donald Trump, and he's the president. We've seen all sorts of stuff in the popular media about this. Of course, this headline would all fall under the what I said about don't pay attention to what's in the popular media. But there were some attempts to try to deal with it, massive bailouts of trillions of dollars. Theories like this, where if you spend $1 on jobless benefits, it creates $1.80 growth, which nobody wants to be unemployed anyway, or at least very few do, because work gives us purpose and meaning, and we want to be satisfied with our work. So putting everybody on unemployment is not the answer. Some really good books have been written. And actually, if you want to watch one thing to kind of get a grip on that, the movie The Big Short is quite interesting and quite entertaining given the topic, given the material it's covering. So if you haven't seen that, I do recommend it. However, nothing has really been learned because this happened in 2013, so it was in the midst of President Obama's second term, that they started to push the banks to make home loans to people with weaker credit. Well, that's exactly what got the ball rolling on the 2007-2008 financial disaster. And so, again, another force that you have no control over, but that has an impact on the economy. I can also say from the financial services industry that nothing has changed, and it's why more than ever you want to be the person that's on top of and in charge of your own finances. And by that I don't mean do it all yourself. I heartily encourage most people to work with an advisor, but you can't just give your money over to someone else and let them make choices. You really have to understand what you're doing and be the person that's making the decisions after the advice. So we've kind of our post-course analysis here today. What we're going to look at is we've talked about principles. These are the 4 P's to your success. Principles, and then plans, and then practices, and finally measuring progress, so which we would call monitoring. So we've looked at through the course how to put plans together and some practices to put them into action, how to use our money, manage our money, handle our money. And once we're done this, you need to be reviewing progress daily, weekly, monthly, annually. You don't have to review everything daily. There are some things that you need to keep on top of daily, some weekly, or at least paycheck to paycheck, some monthly, and then others annually. So your principles are the blueprint that governs everything. And you have to decide for yourself, what are the financial principles that you are going to live by? And it's not just because there's money involved and we want to take care of ourselves financially. It's because money has a profound impact on the choices that we're able to make in life. And so we want to be the master in our own domain with respect to our finances, so that we can make the life choices that we believe in. And that's why we have to have principles around our money. So you need to develop your unique, personal set of financial principles that you live by, that govern how you make every financial choice. That doesn't mean that it has to be some massive document. It could be 10 principles, 7 principles to live by. Things like don't have any debt, pay your house off on a 15-year amortization. Some of these other things that we've talked about throughout the course. Don't borrow for anything. Make sure you've got a protection plan in place for yourself financially to deal with things that come along. So those things can include the insurance, the financial security principles that we talked about in lesson 2. So here's the 5 plans that you have to have. The first we know is a cash flow plan. And that's the plan that we have for how we're going to spend our money, how we're going to deploy our money on a daily, weekly basis, pay period basis. So how we're going to use money, which includes such practical things as don't use credit cards. Be very careful with debit cards. We know that plastic, the use of plastic, and that includes also buying electronically where you don't even need the plastic. So using your credit card on the internet, that kind of thing. We know that that tends to lead people to spend more than they otherwise would. And it's not as simple as, well, if I don't use a credit card, I won't spend money I don't have. The problem is actually at a deep psychological behavioral level, the experience we have when we use cash, when I have to reach into my pocket, there it is, reach into my pocket, take money out, well, there's no money in there today, soon though, cash till payday, take money and pay for something is a completely different experience than pulling out my, in this case, debit card. You just don't feel it or experience it in the same way. It's kind of back to that thing I was talking about at the very beginning about the experience we used to have of our money. And of course, even less so, I mean, is there anything more compulsive and addictive? And believe me, I hear a lot of younger people talking about it. They are members of Amazon Prime. And so they get free shipping because they've paid the annual fee for that. And you can have one-click ordering on Amazon. So literally, you can be browsing through Amazon, see something you like, and there's a button there that says one-click ordering. Bam, you click that, and it's done, and it's on its way to you. Now, of course, Amazon's even talking about things like drones delivering things within a few hours of your ordering. So this feedback loop that we get of pleasure, like, oh, I want this, click, boom, and it comes to my door right now in a day or a week, but soon to be just a few hours, that is going to be something people have to really guard against. So, cash flow plan. Financial security plan. We talked about that. And we're going to have one last quick look at why and what the reasons are. But we talked about the financial security plan so that you are able to deal with whatever comes. And we want to be able to deal with whatever comes because things do come. There are things that we can anticipate that even though they're unlikely to happen to us, we can prepare ourselves for those unlikely events, especially the unlikely events that would be very catastrophic to our lifestyle. You know, I don't know how old you are, but there was a time, certainly well into my 20s, when if you flew, you could go, when you went to the airport, there was these vending machines where you could buy insurance for your trip on your airplane. Now, eventually those went away. I don't know why, because air travel was never dangerous, particularly. It's much, much more dangerous to commute in your car to and from work than it is to fly in an airplane. However, the perception was there, and so people would take care. Now, that's an irrational type of financial security, which is, again, why we plan. Today, you know, here's another absurd example of financial security. I bought some rechargeable batteries, which used to be everywhere. Now they're hard to find, and they've gotten more expensive. But I bought some rechargeable batteries, and I think they were $20 for 4. And they tried to sell me insurance for $4 on these things. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. You know, I'm not going to pay money, 20% of the, or 25%, 20% of the value of something in order to so-called ensure that it's going to last more than 3 years. So when we're putting financial security plans together, we do it rationally. That's why we plan. Financial plan, that's your big picture, what we're doing to get from here to really through our entire lives. And perhaps the younger you are and the more you're just starting out, the less clear that financial plan is going to be, and that's okay. But, you know, if you're an adult who's married and has children and parents and all those things, well, you can anticipate a lot of things in life. And you want to plan for those. So, an investment plan, we talked about just the last week. Your investment plan is about making your investment decisions so that you can plan for a time in the future when you are going to be able to live off your assets rather than live off the income you get from work. And finally, we haven't talked about this, and this is really the object lesson of today, is your generosity plan. So if we go back to that, initial point of view that we talked about earlier, that we are part of the global 1%. Well, that brings with it a responsibility to share. And you've heard it said that it's better to give than to receive. And that's really what I've seen in my life and what I've seen the experience of other people has been. And I'm not, harshing out on you here saying you need to give. I'm saying you're designed to give. And we're very well off. Even those of us who are not that well off relatively in our part of the world are well off. And so we want to manage our finances well so we can take care of ourselves, take care of our families, but also so that we can give to others. And I'm not suggesting who you should give to, just that it would stand you in very good stead to be in a position to give to others. All right, so we know that your cash flow plan is a written document that includes specific advice on personal spending and a practical method to manage your finances. You can find the money to fund your dreams if you are careful about what your dreams are and what you want to do and what's really important to you. You know, if your dream is to spend $10 a day at Starbucks and you're tight for cash already, well, that's a small dream, but you can live out that dream. However, that's probably not your dream. That's probably just what you may do inadvertently. And so we saw the effect that saving modest amounts of money over long periods of time, especially if we start early, that can have. And by going through this process, you can save tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime in inefficient interest costs. You can stop money leaks on stuff that doesn't matter, so you have money for the stuff that does. And the stuff that does is up to you. That's part of your plan. So, this is what the financial security plan is about. Do you know how you or your loved ones will manage to pay your bills and maintain your lifestyle if you or your spouse are unable to work for a significant period of time? And a significant period of time is 90 days or longer. We should have enough money once we get our financial security plan together. We should have enough cash so that if we're unable to work for 90 days, we're going to be okay at minimum. But things happen that can make that make your ability to earn an income be curtailed for longer. So you'll recall when we talked about why we get different types of insurance, why we put that kind of a financial security plan together. It wasn't necessarily about what you think. It's really about what your earning potential is. And so we saw a chart. Here it is again. Over the course of your lifetime, just to kind of go down these lines, if you were age 30, making $40,000 a year, over the course of your working life, you're going to earn another $2.4 million. Now, if you're age 50 and making $65,000, you're going to earn $1.2 million more. And if you're age 30 and you're earning $100,000 a year already, congratulations. And you're likely, even at just regular inflation, to make another $6 million in your lifetime. So when we buy insurance as part of our security plan, this is what we are protecting, because we or our families are depending on that. So if that income were lost, what would happen to you or to your family? What would happen to their lifestyle? That's what insurance is about, is protecting our lifestyle and protecting our future. Because if we become unable to work for a period of time or permanently, building our nest egg to live on in retirement can be severely compromised. Okay, so we talked about a debt elimination plan. It's the optional sixth plan that you do as part of your cash flow and your financial security planning. How am I going to get rid of debt? We looked at some tools to use to develop a debt elimination date. And this is what you should know this. You should be able to answer the question, do you know your debt freedom date? When are you going to be completely out of debt? And I'm going to say there's two debt freedom dates. Your first debt freedom date is the date where you get rid of all your non-house mortgage debt. So you've got credit cards, you've got car payments, you've got whatever else, whatever other accounts. Your first debt freedom date is the date where you have finally paid all those off. And depending on the position you're in, and by the way, it includes student loans, depending on the position you're in, that could be months or it could be years from now. I actually heard a call-in program the other day where a couple, mind you, they're trained up, just finished now to be specialist physicians, but they have over $600,000 in student loan debt. That's certainly the craziest student loan debt I've ever heard. So you should be able to articulate your debt freedom date, and your second debt freedom date is the date that you pay off your home mortgage. So you've really got two categories of debt. You've got consumer debt, and that includes student loans, and then you've got your home debt, one mortgage on your personal residence. All right, so your practices are the systems and tools you need to make it all happen. Tools, calculators, checklists that make it easy, and we've given you a bunch of those. And you're developing your insight in how to operate day to day and long term. And again, I want to encourage you. Changing your practices takes some time. So be patient with yourself. Cut yourself some slack. You'll stumble at first. Don't worry about it. Just pick up and move forward. It's not a disaster. The only real disaster is if you quit. So give yourself some slack. Yeah, I spent money I didn't mean to last month, or I shouldn't have done this, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about what's happened previously. Just reset, keep monitoring, adjust your plan and your practice if you need to, and keep moving forward. So here's the question that you should have ringing around in the back of your mind constantly. How do you know what you can afford to buy? How do I know what I can afford to buy? And that question applies whether you're at the Starbucks, or whether you're at the car dealer, or whether you're going around looking at houses with a realtor. How do you know what you can afford to buy? We talked about how one of the real places that we can slip up is when we're purchasing a home. Especially in Canada, it is such an ingrained concept that we should own a home. And that's getting to be quite challenging in some markets. But it's such an ingrained concept that we should own a home that we don't pause to look at the overall implication in our finances. And so what we need to do is not deny ourselves that we can't own a home, but rather to look at how the acquisition, how the payments on a home, if we're getting a mortgage, are going to fit into our overall finances and what they're going to have an impact on. So, number one rule, your mortgage broker is not the one who tells you how much house you can afford. You need to have, within the context of a clear plan, how much house you can afford to buy for your personal residence. You want to be putting down a minimum of 10%, preferably at least 20%, and you want to set your mortgage on a 15-year amortization and leave it there. So that if you start today, you know your house is going to be paid off in 15 years, 2032. So the classic thing, we know that Canadians redo their mortgages every 3 years, and they buy a new home, or they change homes every 6 years or so. One of the classic games people play is, and I'm living in a market right now, a real estate market, probably third in the country in terms of how much it's ramping up after Vancouver and Toronto, where people are selling out their house. It's appreciated in value, which means they've got more equity. And so then what they're doing is they're taking that equity and they're buying more house and resetting the clock on the amortization. So you start out at 25 years, you make payments for 6 years, and now you've got some more equity, and you leverage that up into buying a much bigger house. And now you think, oh, well, I can afford the same payment. So you reset the clock. So you're back to a 25-year amortization. What you just committed to when you did that, what you just committed to was paying hundreds of thousands of dollars more in interest to buy your home. Now, that's not how it felt. Nobody said that. Nobody said, listen, you were down to 19 years away from paying off your house that was 30% less money. You've reset the clock. You're now going to pay $240,000 more over the course of owning that house. That's if you don't reset the clock again. So it's just so important that you take these things into account, because if you don't, you just committed literally to spending $240,000. You don't think that way, but if you don't think that way, that money's going to go. So it's not your mortgage broker that tells you how much house you can afford. So here's the key question about what's called retirement, but really is just about shifting where our money comes from. So the question is, when will you shift from living on money that you earn by working to living on your savings or living off of your assets? That is the key question that is what we call retirement. We usually ask the question backwards. What age are you going to retire at? Well, I don't know. what does that mean? What does retirement mean? Well, if what I mean by that is I want to shift from having the obligation to go to a 9-to-5 job to get a paycheck so that I am living off my assets, the things I've accumulated, and I can then have the freedom to devote my time and energy to the things that matter most to me, rather than to the things that matter most to my employer. That's the new mindset around work and the end of work. How much of that income will be lost to taxes is an essential question when you're putting that part of your plan together. And that leads us to the question, and we saw the calculator that we've got for that, how much do you need to be saving today? All right, so here's the 7 steps. Step 1, daily money management. You need your cash flow plan. Step 2, build your financial security fortress. Step 3, if you need to, eliminate all debt. Step 4, home ownership and major purchase planning. Step 5, create and build wealth. Step 6 is give. Develop your generosity plan. Think of how you might enjoy it if someone in your family has a need, that you could just give them some money, or a charity that you believe in, or a cause that you believe in. Whatever that might be, that you were able to give willingly and freely to that. And then step 7, we switch gears. We switch gears to living off our assets. So, one last bit. Your wise counsel team. So, taking care of all of this, putting all this together, is very difficult to do all by yourself. You can, and some people do very well doing it all by themselves, because they're willing to put in the time and the focus and the energy to do a good job of it. It's not only not impossible, like many other things, it's never been easier because of the tools that we have at our disposal. So I'm not telling people, don't do it yourself. If you want to do it yourself, by all means, have at it. You're going to need to do a lot of research that goes far beyond the scope of our program here, putting together especially your investment plan. You will have to work with an advisor to acquire insurance for your financial security plan, because there's no other way to buy insurance. In Canada, you can't just buy your own online. You have to go through an advisor, but you know, there are experiences where now you can do all the transaction online with an advisor. So maybe, depending on your level of comfort and skill, maybe you want assistance in building these plans. More likely, you'll want assistance putting the investment plan together. You may certainly need to engage the assistance of a professional to actually acquire the investments. Now, you can do the financial plan yourself, and you can certainly get the investments yourself through online brokerages. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, if you're comfortable and if you know what you're doing, because you're playing with, or you're working on, managing the key component to your life and your future, in the sense that money has an impact on everything we do and everything we would like to do. So you want to cultivate relationships with people who you are comfortable with, who line up with your financial principles, and who, when you go to them with your plan, they can help you perhaps fine-tune it and execute it. If you're encountering people who have practices diametrically opposed to yours, that are just opposite of yours, don't work with them. Find someone else. If you want to do it online, you can do most of it online in terms of working with advisors. If you want to do it by telephone, you can do that. If you like to do it in person, you can do that. There are more choices now than ever, but you need to make decisions, and you need to get on with doing them. So that leads us back to the beginning. We've been on this journey now for 6 weeks together since we started. I hope that you've gained some confidence, that you've developed some plans, that you've got some sense of where you're going and what you're doing. I will continue to monitor the Facebook group. You're welcome to get in touch with us. Phone, email, whatever you like. We're happy to answer questions, help people out. If you are looking for some wise counsel, we can help you out in a lot of those areas. We are fully licensed. We do financial planning. We build investment plans and acquire investments for people. We do financial security, insurance, all that stuff. So we're happy to answer questions. We're happy to help you out. Use the tools. Give us your comments. We've put this together for you, and we have a bunch of people that are coming behind you, and so we want to do the best job we possibly can in helping people to understand their money and put their financial plans together so that they have a clear, concise understanding of their money and where they're going in their life with respect to their finances. So I'm grateful to you for having been a part of this journey, and look forward to seeing you in the Facebook group. Some of you have already got meetings arranged with, whether you're meeting online and looking into some things further. Looking forward to that. It's been great for me. I hope it's been helpful for you, and appreciate any feedback you have. We'll continue to send you a few bits and pieces as follow-up to the course to help you out. And good luck. And, thanks very much, Kellyanne. Totally appreciate you being on this journey with us. Appreciate all of you who've been tuning in, Carrie and Lisa, Donna, and other folks who watch this on the recording. We will get this up again tomorrow. And yeah. So best of luck. Reach out if you need anything. We're here to help. Thanks very much.